by the way, how did people find Graham's talk? Was it? I mean, there was a lot in it, wasn't there?
I think, Dean, from my point of view, it kind of, because I got my soil test done by a different lab.
Speaking,
so
sorry,
I guess
that's John, is it?
John,
John,
yes, John. Sorry. I guess my initial reaction is that his talk was very centred around a report from his lab. Now, because we got ours done at a different lab, which I'm not wedded to, by the way, I guess I felt I was struggling a little bit. Took me a long while to catch up, but that's all right. I got through the chat. I got a couple of suggestions very helpfully from Felicity about other things I could read. So I think what I'm going to get most out of it is I enjoyed the talk, but I'm going to go away and do some reading and then go back to my soil tests and see what it all means. But the other thing was that those three key things that he just said get, get the nutrient balance right, focus on the pH and calcium, and then compost. Like, that's in terms of where to start, that's a bloody good place to start.
Yeah, agreed. And we don't
Simple.
need information, do we? We just want to get started and we'll learn. Yeah.
So that was my point of view anyway.
Yeah, no, terrific. Thanks, John. Anyone else?
Grant here. I'd agree. I thought it was really good, but I feel I've got to go back and look at their presentation again and go through the slides and just try and get it all in my head. Things were going in one ear and they were popping out the other ear. So I just need to put a plug in the right ear and get it all to stay in. So I'd be interested in any other readings also that people had that I could look at as well. But it was really good.
So, yeah, thanks, Grant. So I'm wondering that, with our group here, we do have, let's say there's a small percentage of us who want to sort of build our skills or strength, our muscles around this area. And we have the opportunity, sort of formally or informally, to discuss that amongst ourselves. I think we've got a ready-made environment to do that. It's just a case of figuring out what's going to work, whether we just do something in an evening for an hour and we just talk, once a week or whatever, using these tools, or a 40-minute Zoom session or something like that. And so we build that knowledge so we can start to apply it sensibly.
Yeah, sounds good.
That would be of interest. I mean, I can take a note of that and we can then look to see what we can do. And I've no doubt there's other people that I definitely know who were going to be on the call, said they would, but couldn't, so it seems, and they'd be interested in as well. So I'll make a note of that anyway, in terms of like a bit of a soil understanding group.
What we're doing is understanding this properly.
Sorry, who's that? Graham?
Graham, yeah. I think as this is the basis of our understanding of better soils and crops and everything like that, I think it's the most important thing to get totally understood. So, yeah, I'd be in that.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, because otherwise I feel like we're flying blind a little bit. It's just hit and miss, and it's very costly hit and miss approach, my experience.
Dean, it's John. I just wanted to throw something into the mix. I don't know how other people feel about it. I mean, and I don't want to sound like I'm ragingly in favour of technology, but there are some pretty useful tools out there that allow groups to collaborate, like threaded chats and stuff like that. And I'd be happy to advocate for one if people felt that there was some interest. I guess using as an example, you could have an environment set up for this group, and then you have different threads or channels that are associated with different areas of interest, which means that you can tune in or tune out to what you want, which is a bit harder with email. Most of these things are relatively easy to use, but maybe it's something you and I could chat about another time, but I guess I just wanted to test the waters with the group and just see, would they be interested in something that didn't involve email? Or is everyone really happy with email?
Well, I give you my opinion, but I'll shut up for a minute, see what
It's not like you, Dean.
I'm guessing I know what you're going to say.
I'm happy with anything that gets the information flow going.
And silence obviously means consent by everybody else then. Yeah, that, like, Jess, are you online? Maybe. Tessa?
Yes, hello.
I'm good. I'm glad you're there. I can see the names. I'm not sure who's switched in or might be off having a cup of tea or something. What would work for you guys? You're a bit of a cluster out there at Harcourt.
Sorry, who are you talking to?
Oh, we're talking to John, I think it is. John, is it? John Carruthers, who suggests.
Yeah, well, you know, sort of, we're talking around the table, but my
Yeah.
suggestion was if you want to facilitate exchange of information, then there are some tools that are a lot better than email to do it. And there's some tools that allow you to tune in or tune out of things that you might be particularly interested in, which this group seems to be ripe for, in the sense that some people are really interested in soil and other people are really interested in trees and other people are really interested in livestock. And so an email's pretty crap at being able to filter out that stuff.
Yeah.
So the question was, what appetite would there be in the group for something else, like a chat type thing that allowed us to tune into stuff and type and exchange comments about stuff
And
to
I think
supplement Zoom?
I think Tessa is washing bottles and may not, or doing bottling in her dairy, so she may not have great reception. But yeah, we use Slack, and I use it for a bunch of other organisations as well. It is really useful. Yeah, it's much better than email in terms of having a group conversation, and like you said, that can sort of be separated into different topics. But in terms of sending out documents or like PDFs or reference materials or video links to videos and things, you know, if that's all that's happening, then email is probably fine. But if there is toing and froing and conversation, then Slack is probably a much better choice.
Yeah, I think
Slack is exactly what I had in mind.
Yeah, no, that sounds terrific. So John, are you familiar with it? Sounds like Ant, you're familiar with it. I'm not, but
I'm very familiar with it. I don't want to sound like I'm, you know, I'm not getting any secret commissions or anything from it.
Yeah.
I've used it a lot, and I've put it up against other alternatives, and I think it's pretty unbeatable. It's pretty secure. It's free. You know.
Look, I'm convinced. So, and think there seems to be no dissent on this call about it. So, let's give it a go, and let's start with the soils and developing what we've been listening to today from Graham, and you know, just build our knowledge, our awareness of how to read these things and put it into something sort of useful and practical for all of us.
People can use it on their computer, or they can just use it on a smartphone, and you can, if you don't want to get reminders from it, you mute it, and then that means you control when you go in and look at stuff, and it means you can look back through the threads and find debate about stuff, even if you didn't have the time to tune in when people were talking about it. So it's searchable, so you can search for a topic. You know, you're building up a library of conversation, basically.
Are you happy to take the lead on this?
Yeah, I guess so. I think it'd be a good idea if you were the administrator, I think. So I mean,
I don't know.
It sounds like me or Sass could like set it up, but you know, I think you need to be brought in as one of the moderators or people running it, because that's how it works.
Yeah, no, look, I'm happy to do that. Just I know nothing about it, so we'll have to talk about what I'd need to do, because I'm zero on that at the moment.
Yeah, it's not scary. It's really as technology. Look, it takes about half an hour to get kind of basically used to it, but that's about it.
Okay.
And what was that called again? Slack.
Yeah, SLACK. Yeah, it's an enterprise grade sort of. It's like Zoom. It's basically aimed at, you know, big organisations, but they've given away a free version to everyone else, so that we end up eventually deciding we might want to pay for it.
That sounds very good.
But we don't have to; it's free. So
yeah. Well, let's take that offline, John. I'll follow up with you, and then we'll just send
beautiful. Let's do that.
Give it new soils as a test case for it.
Yep.
So I've made a note of that.
Yeah. So Dean, the best way would be you and I just take it offline. You and I have a Zoom call or something together, and I'll just walk you through it.
Yep.
Cool.
All right. So yeah, just I thought there's an opportunity to have a quick check-in, and that's all it is, quick, but at least it's an opportunity for everyone to say something rather than sit on the end of the line and do something else, which we can all do anyway. But if we just go through the list here, and if people answer, then that's great, they'll respond. If not, then I presume that they've left their desk for a while. So perhaps start with you, Graham, since on this list of people on the screen here, you're after Felicity, and so you're the first of our group. And just say, literally in a sentence, why you joined the program and what do you expect out of it? Just sort of checking in to see it's working with everyone.
Go for it.
Yep.
Yeah, basically it's just gain knowledge and speak with like-minded people and work out in your own mind what the best way is to benefit your land, basically. Your comments on Indigenous people looking after their land is just so relevant in so many ways, it's not funny. So it's working with the land, not against it, and trying to get everything back in balance.
Okay, terrific. Thanks, Graham. Who's next? Grant?
Yep, I'm here. So I suppose Kerry and I joined. We just got our property beginning of last year, so we were new to the whole concept, and we were looking for a bit of a community of interest, which I think we found with this group. So we found that really good, on a very steep learning curve. So constantly feeling I'm not quite getting the idea of things, and having to go back and hearing things 2 or 3 or 4 times is sometimes useful, just to really either confirm that you are understanding things or realise that what you thought you knew is actually different from what it really is. But so we really enjoyed the first year, and very much enjoyed seeing people in real life and doing practical things and going to people's place. So hopefully after the COVID, we can get back to doing a bit of that as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's a common theme, I think, from everybody, which I was going to touch on later, but you've led with that one. That's good. And Greg, are you there? Greg Denny?
Hi, it's Deb here. Greg's actually not been able to get away from work.
Okay, hi, Deb.
Yeah, hi. So we're here. We're finally on the farm, which is really good. We bought a property, settled last December. We moved in. We've been here for 2 weeks. So we've got 135 acres at Barringhut. Greg's the farmer. He's always been a farmer. I'm the new chum that's kind of starting from, well, not really from scratch, because 15 years of listening to Greg, I've kind of know a little bit. But it's good to get back in and do things on a regenerative fashion. That's the only thing that got me interested in farming. And Greg's always been into it. He just didn't get a chance to do it down in the Otways. And he's keen to kind of play with a more brittle environment, totally different to what he's had before in the Otways. So, yeah, we're liking the group community, and it'll be great to get into the farming. We've just kind of getting our heads around it after just having moved. But really enjoying this and looking forward to getting soil tests and getting everything just beginning, because we've got some weed problems.
Yeah, sure. No, that's terrific, Deb. And just, yeah, if you've got anything that's fallen off the radar for some reason, like, that you're aware of that maybe I don't mention, and that's, for example, the soil testing, because there's a bunch of people who didn't get it done last year we need to make sure that's all picked up and noted. And Tom, I think, still on the line, Tom Nicholas, who probably will make a note of this. Well,
oh, great. We need that done. We got it done before we bought it, just to make sure that it didn't have any contaminants. So we know that it's clear we could do things organically, which we're keen to do. The trick is we've got huge, very, very healthy Patterson's curse at the moment amongst every other weed that you're likely to come up with. And it's interesting to kind of figure out a way that is not spraying to combat that, which is just kind of build up the soil for other things, I guess, so that the Patterson's curse is no longer required by the soil. Maybe, don't know. So some advice on how to deal with weeds, or is that just focusing on what you want rather than focusing on fighting something that's there?
I think these points are common to all of us at some level. So, yeah, anyone that's got a point that they might think is just unique to them, we can be damn sure that probably applies to at least half of us at some level. Okay. Thanks, Deb. And Jeff Huzz, are you online, Jeff? Hello, Jeff. You there? Okay, move on. Joe and Jess, are you there? I know Jess can't be far away.
Yeah, so are we still doing a presentation later, Dean, or not?
Yeah.
Oh, we are? Oh, we'll go then. Because it'll be covered in that, and then you'll have more time now to go through the rest of the people.
So what are you saying, Jess?
Are we still doing a presentation later, Dean?
Yeah, we are. The answer is yes. Yeah, I'm just looking at the run sheet because we've turned everything upside down with bringing Graham on early. Well, that worked out okay anyway.
Okay, it goes for 15 minutes. Will that fit in?
That's fine. We'll make that work, Jess. Yep.
Okay. Well, we'll save ours till then.
Okay, that's good.
All right.
Yeah, that's perfect. John Crothers, just quickly, why join the program? What do you expect to get out of it, and how it's been for you?
Yeah, great. I think I was pretty similar to. Sorry, I've forgotten their name, but we're right in at the ground floor. We bought a property in Guildford, which is sort of equidistant between Castlemaine and Hepburn, and about 3 years ago, and we've done. I guess we don't come from the land. We don't live on the land, although that's about to change in the next couple of months. We're moving up from Melbourne, and I guess we just wanted to join. It was that sense of feeling as though we didn't know very much. I mean, I was influenced by Charles Massey's group, by Charles Massey's book, but we just didn't feel. We felt kind of lonely. We didn't really know who to turn to as a community of practice. And I guess this thing really your group, Dean, stood out as a fabulous group of people who were trying to help one another. So, and covering a whole lot of interesting topics. 3 points to summarise the first year, I guess, was it really laid out a series of things that we needed to know, introduced us to a bunch of people that are at different stages in terms of working on the land. And what the third one be? Oh, and a great sort of repository of information to turn back to when we do actually start doing some stuff. So we've started doing some tree planting, but we haven't gotten into cover crops yet. But all the information's there when we're ready to pull the trigger. Yeah, no, that's great. And the people you're referring to before was Grant and Kerry, by the way. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Thanks for reminding me. Paul, are you there? Paul Foreman?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, good echo, Paul, so keep going.
Yeah, thanks, Dean. I won't speak for too long, but yeah, look, I mainly got involved because I've got a property out in Walmer, and we're trying to sort of have a bit of a blend between having some production and having some conservation. But it's a big landscape and it's a big system, and there's lots of issues to deal with. So hooking up with a lot of I guess kindred spirits or people that think in similar ways is always a good thing in terms of learning stuff. But I suppose more importantly, it's about how we can sort of muster a kind of collective effort because I've always felt that, you know, doing your work on your property is all well and good for your little postage stamp, but unless we tackle the big issues at a big scale, we can't really sort of pretend that we're really tackling the issues that we need to face together. So to me, it's about that sort of, how do we develop that collective effort? How do we learn how our properties fit in the bigger system and how the processes work? Like, I found that stuff from Graham very interesting before. However, I'd like to see a lot more around how that sort of, you know, slightly, you know, I guess a reductionist sort of thinking fits into a more systemic way of looking at the landscape, a la the ecological literacy that Charles Massey talks about, those sort of concepts. Like, I think there's more to be done to sort of figure out how it plugs into that that functional thinking. So anyway, that's my perspective, and I'd like to sort of figure out how we can, you know, collectively come up with that bigger project.
Yeah, that's I'm with you completely there, Paul. I think we need to do that, and that's a conversation we should build on. Sass, are you there?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was great yesterday, by the way. And if for those of you who may not know, Sass, that if you look back to the, well, I suppose you can't see it, but at the beginning of the presentation that said today, there was a group of 4 intrepid warriors standing in the middle of a big vegetable patch. And Sass was one of those 4. That's at Harcourt. And we braved the weather to that visit and that photo. It was great. So, Sass, over to you.
All good. Thanks, Dean. Yeah, so I'm one half of Gung Ho Growers. So we've got a market garden out in Harcourt, which is part of the Harcourt Organic Farming Co-op. So Tessa, who's got the micro dairy, and she'll probably chat in a second, and Ant, who's running the orchard, we're all part of the same, we all run our own businesses, but we're all on one property. So I guess our interest in the regen ag stuff is a little bit different. Like, I guess a lot of the regen ag stuff that I see is around grazing and animals and bigger, broader landscape pictures. But what Mel and I do with Gung Ho is quite intensive and on quite a small amount of land. Like, we're only farming 1.5 acres total, but really interested in how we can use the concepts of regen ag in building carbon and building the life in our soil in a really intensive way. Most of our crops are annual, so it's really intensive, high turnover, but we try and incorporate lots of the concepts of never having bare soil and building carbon and having lots of biodiversity and feeding the soil. But yeah, I'm really interested in the soil, more of an in-depth understanding around soil and how to interpret soil results, because we've been farming there for 5 years, but we've progressively taken on more and more blocks of land, and we've always got our soil tests done in the very beginning of taking on a new block of land. So we haven't done comparative soil tests to see how the land has changed since it's been in production. So I'm really interested to kind of get some more soil tests done and do comparative analysis, especially around carbon and microbes. Yeah, and really interested in learning from other people and seeing what other people have got going on.
That's terrific, Sass. And yeah, there is a lot that you can take from even the grazing and the cover cropping and that sort of, because as you say, the principles are all there. And Gabe Brown summarised it well in his book. Those 5, I think it might be 7 now, core principles. And if you embrace those, if we all listen, follow those, then we can't go too far wrong. In fact, it's more the other way. We start to move in the right direction. Tess, are you there? You're the last one on the list here. We might be bottling.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, are you bottling, or can you talk for 1 minute?
I can talk, yeah. I'm just washing bottles as I listen. Yeah, so I, at the same property as Sass, I'm running the micro dairy. So it's a very small scale, but most of these principles are applicable. So I'm just milking 7 at the moment, and I'm going to be building up to a herd of 10. And the main thing I showed Dean yesterday was there's one main block in particular that's my big case study, because when I took it on, it was over our heads in gorse and briar rose and blackberries. And I'm just taking a really slow and steady experimental approach to trying to regenerate it a bit and turn it into like productive pasture for grazing rather than just hiding for kangaroos and rabbits. But it's severely degraded from years of, it's had really odd earthworks done to intentionally take the water off the block, and which with that it's taken all the topsoil and the nutrients. So it's quite a big project. But yeah, I've done quite a lot of courses over the time, and I guess what I like about doing this, having this group, is I think I'm at a point where I actually need to just start working with other people and seeing other people's examples and experimenting, rather than just doing a kind of abstract course on someone else's property that's got really different, is in a totally different area, and you know it's a bit harder to kind of put it into your own practice. So I guess that's me.
Yeah, no, great, Tess. And I think what John was talking about, John and Ant were talking about before with the Slack tool, I like the name of it, isn't it? That maybe there's a thread there to, you know, feed your project into, because it's a classic case that I think everybody has got a paddock like that, maybe maybe not just one paddock like that. So it's like a living laboratory. Okay, so that's done for the check-in. I don't think I've missed anybody. Oh, Ant, you've come back in the line, or I can see you there now. Did you want to add anything there, Ant?
Yeah, I'm happy to give a quick intro into what I'm doing. I've been away for a bit, so I missed what we're kind of saying. Are we just talking about our own properties?
Yeah, sort of in a condensed version of who you are, why you joined the program, what you expect to get out of it, and 3 things that summarise the first year for you.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm another one of the farmers at the co-op, and so I manage the orchard, which has been managed organically before me for maybe 12 years or so, and then conventionally before that. What I really have enjoyed out of the program so far is, again, kind of like what Tess said, those little workshops and things. I'm much more interested and focused on, in terms of running experiments here, on the sort of biology side of things. I like this, what we've done today as a background sort of reference point to see what has changed over time, but I am not super interested in going deep in the chemistry of the soil. I'm more about the biology. And so I've done some experiments here with doing some cropping in interrows in between the trees, and also doing some diversity plantings. And I'm also trying to get some grazing, kind of upscale the grazing that I'm currently doing in the orchard, and experimenting with poultry and grazing geese and chickens. Yeah,
that's great. Thanks, Ant. We're laying a bit of a discussion that we will continue to return to. I'm thinking when we have our sort of monthly webinars, meetings, however that works out, that we can just continue this as an ongoing sort of discussion thread, not one that dominates, but one that just continues to keep that conversation alive and we can tap into. So I don't think we have to discuss this now, but if it's an opportunity for you to feedback to me what you'd like to have more or less of, but I think I'm getting is that people really value the field work as much as we can be able to do that, and seeing what others are doing and sort of the applied side of it. We've probably got already a fair bit of information about the theory and how things can work and should work and so on, but it's a case of transferring that onto our own land. All right, so Darren, let's just go to the next slide, and I'm mindful that we'll take lunch in a second. You there, Darren? Oh, by the way, sorry, just the last picture. Sorry, just the previous slide. You can see, yeah, you see that picture on the right-hand side. that, for those of you who may not be aware, because there is a person behind that, that's a tillage radish, grown in about, I think it's 14-inch rainfall up west of Narrabri in New South Wales, and they've just started putting these cover crops in, and this is, so it's it's pretty harsh country, but it's remarkable what they're doing and how well this thing wants to grow. So yeah, it just blew our mind when we saw that. It's worthy of a photo, but it's about 1 metre almost long. It's seriously long. So anyway, I thought I'd better explain that, having put it there. Okay, next slide. Thanks, Darren. Yeah. So what I wanted to do just quickly, by way of sense of completion, is look at what we did last year, but not in any detail, but just to remind ourselves. So we did the climate outlook workshop with Graham Anderson from AgVic, and the links to that are still available. And I think a lot of those links are valuable for us to be mindful of in terms of thinking or considering how is the climate changing, what do we need to, what could that mean for us? Then we conducted the soil tests on the 13 farms and do another 10 this year. So those of you who haven't had one done, please step forward and identify yourselves, and we can put that into a schedule with Tom. We did that workshop with both Rebecca Mitchell from AgVic and the creating or stepping into an avatar of being a nematode or a piece of fungi or bacteria of all sorts with David Hardwick, which was a bit of fun. And I mean, these are people we can bring back as we need to, but the CMA has recorded all these, and they're on the website, and I've got a link to that in a minute. The holistic grazing with Dick Richardson, he's available ongoingly to provide support, and I'm not sure that anyone's tapped into him yet, but that's an ongoing theme regardless. The dung beetle preparation, we've postponed to this year, and I'll come to that in a minute because that's the next workshop, purely governed by time frames. And because of the COVID situation, we weren't able to run some of the trials that we had planned last year. Hopefully we can find a way around that. Now we've got pretty much a full 12 months to work through. Last year we only had about 7 months at best. Cover cropping, which is Coles Ice, he's agreed to continue to provide that ongoing support and mentorship, which I think is incredibly valuable, or will be valuable. And Jess, I know, benefited from that. And we'll look at biochar later. We touched on biochar, and we'll come back to that as an ongoing topic and develop that more for this coming year. Revegetation is another one that's ongoing. And then there's a whole bunch of tools, which I've got some now that we've listed, if you can see that there. So they're available to borrow from the MASC library. So then we covered carried forward a number of those items which I've just referred to. And one thing that has occurred is that the number of people on our email list is about 48 now, so the numbers can increase considerably. So part of my challenge is to figure out how best to manage that in a way that works for everybody. So next one, thanks, Darren. You there, Darren? Okay, so some of the resources. So this gives you an idea of what we have. I mentioned that before. Most of those books or pictures of some of the tools we have. The nutrition rules book wasn't available, so that didn't come through, by the way, but I've got them here. And can you all see me on your video? Yes? No? Hello?
Yep.
You can see your screen.
Right.
Yeah.
So you know what that is, right?
Yeah, you can see your screen.
Yeah, okay. So that's the water infiltrometer, so you can borrow that to put that, see how quickly water absorbs through your soil profile as part of your own recording. We've got the penetrometer here as well, and we've got a bricks meter. So just think about when you might, or the best time to come and get those, borrow those, and do your testing and monitoring, and then pass them back. On the right-hand side is an example of what the CMA has done, and there's a reference there, a YouTube reference for the link to the videos and webinars and so on, which I know not everyone can get to all of the events and webinars, so it's there if you want to review or catch up. So that's fine, Darren, and then keep going. Next page. And so we've done that session now with Graham. The next page again, I think we've covered that as well. Yep, that's okay. So we're making it time there. That's good. And yeah. And so one thing that I'm required to do at the end of each year, and I'll talk about that perhaps just after lunch briefly, and that's we've got an obligation as part of the program, and if we have questions around this, Darren and Felicity online, but there's things that little like KPIs and things we need to ensure that we're doing a minimum number of trials and workshops and so on. So it's an opportunity just to let you know at a high level what those are, because that informs the way the program is structured and how many of one thing we do and not of the other, and also the type of information we need to capture to demonstrate that the money that's coming through the CMA is well targeted and flowing through to the trials and demonstrations and so on. And if we go through to this one here, next one, sorry, Darren. Yeah. So this is where the farm trials, and Jess has kindly, at my invitation, agreed to share her experience of what they've done on their property, which is a really terrific result, and I could clearly see that excitement when she sent through the text message and the email to me of their cover crop trial. So the one thing I'm wondering right now is, do we want to have lunch first and then come back in 15 minutes or so, and then Jess can run through her little case study and tell us how that's gone for her?
Lunch should be good.
So this is, I think, a fascinating video, which we won't watch now. I'd love to play it now, but it's something that when this gets sent out, I'll send the link to you, and we can talk about it at our next session, because this is it's a 20-minute video. It covers the whole thing from, in fact, it works backwards from human health to soil health. And there's a lot of stuff being revealed now by these leading practitioners and medical people that's it borders on mind-blowing, but it's fascinating. Okay, next one. Thanks, Darren. So the program for this year, and I've just put them, rather than sort of go into a lot of words and cells and things to detail this, so broad brush, this is what it looks like. So we started soils last year. That was sort of part one, and we're continuing that theme, and we will continue that theme in whatever way works best for everybody until we're exhausted and we're all experts. Part of the challenge in not just selecting the topics, but the sequence of those is very much governed by the seasons and availability of people. So it's a bit of a balancing act there. So dung beetles, for example, is our next webinar / workshop, and I'll come to that. That'll be actually the last slide here, a couple down further on. Then there's the on-farm grass and pasture inventories, which we talked about, we touched on last year. Go back, please, Darren. Yeah. And Paul's going to assist us with that, Paul Foreman. So we've got a specific session allocated for that, and a number of farms can put up their hand and say, I'd like to have this done, and we'll look to find ways to do that equitably. The multi-species cover crop with Collins Ice will continue to roll that on and have more trials and more demonstrations, just like we've seen with Jess and Joe. Potentially tremendous stuff. So if we can all get to a point where we can, with confidence, actually put in either winter and or summer cover crop, and we know it's going to succeed, how good would that be? We'll continue to manage grazing. Dick Richardson's still available, and he's still willing to, at no additional cost, to provide support around that. So we'll definitely continue that theme, and maybe that's another thread on Slack for those who are into managed grazing. And then the final two ones are coming back to the revegetation and developing that in greater depth, which we've laid a foundation for that last year with Paul and Dave. And finally, it's the soil amendments and biochar, which is much more sort of like the biological aspect of it and how biochar can work in with that greater systems approach. So let's move on again. Next slide. Yeah, again, I'm not going to read this through, but just know that there's certain outputs that we need to achieve as a minimum outputs from the program. And we can talk about that next time, but you know, the course is partly designed around achieving those, as well as making it rich enough to be of value to everybody and not just achieve outputs. Again, there's, based on what people wanted right at the beginning of the program, we came together, and the, if you like, the strategic plan for the 3 years was laid out. There's a spreadsheet here, which is very much part of the grant application each year, that we follow that as closely as possible, so that the key themes we are addressing in the way we've designed and roll out the program from year to year. We can dive into the detail of that more as appropriate. And also we've got Darren and Felicity available to give us guidance on the CMA's thinking in that regard as well. Next one, thanks. Okay, so this is the, well, it's called the annual work plan, right? So, excuse me, the left-hand column is what we did last year, and the second from the right is what we'll be, where we'll end up at the end of next year. So it's a continuum essentially, and some of the themes will roll forward all the way along, like the soil side of it, the cover cropping, holistic management, and so on. So you can see how that sort of moves from one year to the next. The centre block there is clearly this year, and then it's a case of saying, well, how do we structure and stagger the respective workshops or seminars and field events on a quarter by quarter basis, so that we don't actually find that we're suddenly having to do all of them in one quarter. Why? Because, you know, it's springtime and that's where things happen. But there's things that we can do in those other times of the year, even though it might be no rain and, you know, it's a different growing pattern and grazing and that sort of thing. So that's the basis for the thinking there. So it's not just a series of discrete events each year. They actually, there's a continuity, assuming that on each of our farms that we do have a longer term view, which pretty much I think everybody is adopting. Okay, next one. And there's the specifics around each of the workshops, which is basically workshop / webinar as it is at the moment. As soon as we can turn the webinar into a workshop, we'll do that. We've got the field components which tie back to each of those workshop events. There's an expense budget assigned to each of those. There's an expectation around in-kind contribution, because we know that landholders, like we've just seen with that case study, there's a lot of landholder commitment and time and expense that goes into them as well, which, if anything, that column understates the reality, but we do have to provide a guesstimate for that. And again, a sufficiently useful description of what actually occurs in each of those activities. We can talk about that in subsequent programs or offline if people want to go back and revisit any of those. That's perfectly fine. Next one, Darren, please. And the approach that I would encourage us all to be mindful of and can adopt at different levels is basically that continuous improvement model upon which the whole international standards organisation standards are based, which is in this case, it's called the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle. So if you apply that to what you're doing, and just like the case study now, you plan what you're going to do based on what you know at the time, and you budget and so on. Then you actually do it. Then you check to see how you're going, and then you go and revise and review before you to feed that into your plan for the next time around. So you could take that little cycle there and use that for cover cropping, grazing, any of the on-farm enterprises. If you flip across the other diagram, the whole idea is that when you implement that, you actually move up that slope. Jess talked about increasing productivity, efficiency, and so on. That's very much a symbolic version of that. So as you move up that slope and increase those measures, then you've got to put in a little chock, if you like, which is called the standard here. So you've got to change your practices and put the mechanisms in place so that you don't roll back down the hill to where you started, but it becomes the new norm. And by doing that and sort of systematizing that on farm, that's how we end up with a stable, effective, productive, biologically balanced system. Next one. And I've attached another video here. Again, I'm happy to send you the link, and the link is actually embedded behind this presentation anyway. And this is one of the most amazing examples I have ever seen, and it's done by a fellow called Darren Aitken of Vortex Veggies down at Inverleigh, west of Geelong, who's a biodynamic market gardener. And he follows the biodynamic principles in terms of putting a cover crop in, but these guys have been doing it for 40 years, just they never promoted it to anybody. But exactly what people are doing today with cover crops, these people have been doing, and doing it incredibly successfully, just quietly. And he shows how he's turned a horse paddock that was otherwise cemented, and it was like a concrete surface because it was just so hard and compacted. And he's turned it around within 75 days into this vibrant, living, remarkable soil. 75 days is extraordinary. So that's a video for there to watch after dinner one night. And finally, the last one. Is dung beetles. And we have, the dung beetles are coming from South Australia, and Greg Dalton, who's one of the leading people in Australia with dung beetles and breeding them and training people in them. In fact, he's got the biggest growing program in Australia for dung beetles. He's providing 4 nurseries for us to use within our program ongoingly, and a series of like boxes of dung beetles of the two different types. One is the vaca, the top one, and the other one is a bubalis. Bubalis is active at this time of the year. It's a winter active one, and the vaca is more towards the remain that's moving into spring side of it. And Greg can't come over because the Border Police won't allow him, but we'll do a webinar on the 10th, which is the Thursday, at the same time. That lasts for around about an hour, maybe a bit over that. I'll have to check in with him. And then the following week, we'll take those nurseries and the beetles and we'll deploy them on properties within the group. Greg will choose which properties because he knows what he's looking for. And so I've sent each of you guys who put your hand up and said, I'm interested in dung beetles, I've sent a site assessment form to you. You need to get that back to me and I can forward that on to Greg. And then we can set up then he can confirm which properties he wants to do that on. And we'll do that with him in the background over the video link, FaceTime, one of those links, as we install that in the paddocks. And once the dung beetles, because they multiply very quickly, once they've been set up on one farm, then the next season, we can use those same nurseries, transfer them to the next farm with more dung beetles. So we can have that as part of an ongoing program as well. So I think that's a terrific place to finish up today on, namely dung beetles. But it's over to you for 2 or 3 minutes to take any feedback, hear your thoughts and views, and things that perhaps you would like to have had covered during this regrouping kickoff session.
Dean, I've got a couple of books here. Where will I drop those off there out of the library, out of the communal library? Where will I drop those off?
Yeah, if you can, that's Graham, is it?
Yep, Graham Connell, yep.
Yeah, Graham, I will send you Kieran's number and you can contact Kieran directly. He runs, or he's the person at the MASG office to be in contact with.
No worries, yep, thanks.
And he coordinates the library. So yeah, please do that and I'll give you his number.
No worries, thank you.
No worries. Are there any other questions? And thanks for your patience, by the way. It's been, again, a full session. Right. Okay, thanks, Felicity. Thanks, Darren, for providing the support. And thanks, everyone who's still on the line for participating. And we look forward to ramping up the whole season. And by all means, please contact me wherever, whenever, and provide your input into enriching the program along the way.
Thanks, Dean. Thanks, everyone, for participating.